The stitch length on the Husqvarna Viking Embroidery S600 is actually adjusted on screen. Now I'm going to show you a quick little tip regarding the built-in sewing advisor that we also have, but also how to know when and where to adjust stitch length. So first off, the number you see here, the 2.5, is actually 2 millimeters long in stitch length, and you'll see that that number is very similar to what you see on your sewing machine. So as you work with thicker fabrics, so as you're working with a minky fabric or a fleece fabric or even 2 layers of denim, that thickness needs to have a little bit longer stitch. The stitch length being longer will make it so these stitches aren't so close together. You're really kind of wasting thread if you're really putting stitches that almost look filled in along that edge. It will also help with the feed dogs moving your fabric through the machine without you having to help it. So we're talking about heavy fabrics first, and then we'll talk about your thinner fabrics next. So as we do a plus, number one, you'll see that it only changes 1/10 of a millimeter every time you touch the plus. Now, you can also see when you've changed it because the number is highlighted. So at a glance, you'll be like, oh yeah, I made that stitch length longer. So if you were looking to make it longer, you're going to need to go from 2.5 to 3. Or up to 3.5. And that way you will start to see an actual difference in the stitch length. So let me actually do it on this side, and then you will see the difference in the length of the stitch. So here we have a much longer stitch. Now if this was a heavier fabric, it will probably turn out looking like this even though you have lengthened the stitch length, but it'll pull that fabric in really nice. The other thing that you'll see is you can go all the way up to, I believe 5 is our maximum here. I'm going to just touch and hold. Yes, 5 in your stitch length. I love that it's right at my fingertips so I can change it while I'm serging. And if you do want to save this setting for a specific fabric, you can always come over to the heart with the arrow pointing into it and save this particular stitch length. Now, here's a couple tricks too. Instead of going all the way back to the default number and trying to find what that number actually was, do you know that you can actually choose just a different stitch altogether, X out of it, and then come back to the 4 thread overlock, and it will have cleared out that number for you. Now I mentioned for lighter weight fabrics, you are going to want a shorter stitch length, so probably down closer to 2 millimeters, and that will put a nice stitch length on something that's sheer fabric or even a satin fabric. That will make the difference. But what if we were to use the sewing advisor for the stitch that we're actually choosing? Here you can select the fabric type you're using. So for example, if we pick a heavier fabric, you see that that stitch length will also be changed based on the fabric you have told it you're using. Same thing if you come back here and choose a lighter weight fabric. Well, for this particular stitch, it's actually just 2.5. But depending on which particular stitch you're working on and which fabric you choose, you will find that that stitch length will actually be changed for you. Now, just a reminder, when you are using the sewing advisor, if you don't know what fabric you're using, you want the most kind of in the middle of the road settings, make sure you have the fabric B selected. That's the woven medium, and then you won't get anything extra applied to your settings like differential feed or a different stitch length or such. So just kind of keep that in mind until you're ready to tell the machine what fabric you're using. Leave it on B for woven fabric. So again, you can go ahead and try the different stitch lengths. I try a long one, a short one, a medium one, when I'm testing out my fabrics to find out which stitch length looks the best.